Yeah, we thought about this for a while and kind of come up with a definition that I think encompasses kind of the key points. We refer to data monetization as the process of generating measurable value streams from available data assets. So a little bit to unpack there. First, it's a process. So we think that data monetization ought to be something that it's ongoing. It's not a one-time exercise. Much the same way that you have a process around defining and rolling out and implementing your core products and services. Also, it should involve measurable value streams. So yes, there's a lot of things that we do with data in our organizations that generate value, right? But very often we don't measure it. Like we don't measure the value of data that's used perhaps in an operational context or even in an analytic context. And so we want to make sure that we're measuring those value streams, whatever they are. And then the last part of that is about available data assets. So many organizations only think about the data that's inside their own four walls, but there's also a lot of valuable external data that if you could get access to it and integrate it with your own data might provide some really interesting and higher value monetization use cases. So the process of generating measurable value streams from available data assets, and I think that's about as tight a definition as you could hope for. One is indirect data monetization, where data is used more internally to generate value. And then the other is direct data monetization, where you're generating value by externalizing your data in some way. And then kind of within each of those broad classes, if we're looking at ways that data is used indirectly or internally, we can use data to improve process performance. We can use data to reduce risk or improve compliance. We can use data to develop new products or markets or solidify partner relationships. There's also some other ways we can use data that are a little bit kind of on the edge. One of the things that I recommend for organizations is if they are making data available externally, that one of the things they also want to do is create a branded index that they can use to promote the data that they have for sale or for licensing. And then for direct data monetization or monetizing data externally, you can barter or trade with data. It doesn't have to be for cash. You can barter or trade with it for non-cash commercial considerations like discounts or favorable payment terms. You can also use it to enhance existing products or services by baking data into existing products or services. You can license data yourselves via a data marketplace platform or through data brokers or external data marketplaces. You can sell insights and analyses and reports. And you can also do what we call inverted data monetization, which is rather than this is particularly apropos for customer data, where like I can't sell you my customer data because of various privacy, regulatory reasons, but I can sell your stuff to my customers. So in that way, I'm generating value from my customer data. I'm monetizing my customer data without ever exposing who they are. So yeah, a broad variety of ways to monetize data. Most of them have something to do with exchanging data in some capacity with others. You see a lot of indirect data monetization. The problem is that many organizations are not measuring the impact that the data is having on the business. They're just kind of either taking it for granted or just measuring it in some kind of back of the napkin sort of way. I think that much like any other kind of asset, whether it's a material asset or a financial asset, that organizations are really compelled to determine the ROI or the net asset value from those data assets. And even though data is not an accounting balance sheet asset due to vagaries in the accounting system we won't get into, but I think organizations should feel compelled to understand the cost basis and the economic value that data assets are providing. Many companies are already doing this, particularly retailers, making their data inventory, sales, shopping basket analysis, discounts, supply chain data available to their CPG suppliers. And they do this to make those relationships more effective. But what happens is they end up kind of giving this data away, and those suppliers end up asking for more and more data, or they want that data in a cut and sliced and diced in a different way. We want benchmarks, we want analyses, we want forecasts, we want them in our own format, or we want the data integrated into our own systems as a supplier. And it becomes a real slippery slope for an organization that hasn't determined where and when they're going to cut that off. And then say, listen, we can provide you this extra productized information, but it's going to cost you. There's going to be a premium for that. And this is where organizations start to really think maybe more seriously about creating a data products organization, not only to make data available to their partners, but maybe more broadly as well. So I think a data product is anything that is consumable, right? And it can take various forms, and data consumption can take a lot of different forms. So at some level, a raw data stream could be a data product if it's ingestible by some system. But more often we're thinking about data products in terms of them being maybe consumed by humans rather than machines. And in that case, we want to package it up in a certain way, either in terms of some kind of analytics, a scorecard or benchmarking capability, or maybe some kind of written analysis. So yeah, data products can take a lot of different forms. I think as we move forward more and more, particularly in this kind of new age of AI that we're entering, I think machines are going to, and I wrote about this in Infonomics, that increasingly machines are going to be the primary consumers of data, not people. So yes, we need to think about packaging data up for human consumption, but more and more we need to think about the systems that our partners and suppliers and customers and others have, and the way that we can make our data available to those systems and applications. Way I have to describe that is, a lot of people talk about data as the new oil, right? And while that certainly demonstrates an understanding that data is a driver of the economy today, much as oil was, a century ago, and still is, but it misses the point that data has unique economic qualities that oil doesn't have. Data is, I'll get to your answer here in a moment. Data is, when you consume oil, it goes away. You can only consume a drop of oil once. And that when you consume a drop of oil, it doesn't create more oil. And that when you consume a drop of oil, you can't consume that drop of oil again. So data is very different. Data is what we would call a non-rivalrous, non-depleting, progenitive asset. That is, you can use any unit of data multiple ways simultaneously. You can use it over and over again, as long as it maintains some degree of relevance and utility. And when you use data, you're often in a position to capture more data about whenever and wherever that data was used. So in that regard, and that leads us to kind of how we're packaging data. Well, so when we think about creating a data product, we can take any type of data, any data source, combine it, integrate it, analyze it, tear it apart, put it together in all sorts of different ways. And we don't need to fixate on just one way. We can think about packaging that data up in multiple ways, and selling it over and over again, including it in new data products that we're creating, and also helping our buyers, our consumers, think about ways that they can use that data to perhaps create more valuable data, especially internally. If those are internal consumers, we want them to be creating more data from the data products that we're providing them. The other real difference is that we are not typically selling data, we are licensing it. We're selling rights to use that data. We're not typically transferring ownership of it the way that we do with, like, when I sell, when the pizza place across the street sells me a pizza, I'm taking ownership of that pizza, right? And then I'm consuming it. Data is different. Again, you're conferring rights, you're transferring rights, not ownership. So The good news is that you can sell it over and over again. The bad news may be that the market can become saturated, and the value of data. In order to maintain a price for data, you might have to artificially maintain a certain level of scarcity. One of the things that I see in data licensing agreements that's often forgotten about is survivability. Like when the contract expires or is terminated, does the user, consumer of that data have the rights to continue using that data as long as it maintains some relevance? But there are all sorts of contractual terms like that that organizations kind of forget about. And most corporate lawyers are not trained or experienced in dealing with the nuances of licensing a non-rivalrous, non-depleting kind of asset. You're kind of getting back to the process. We're looking at first the ideation. So we want to we work with clients to, and I'm kind of share West Monroe's approach to this. We'll work with them to generate ideas, and those involve workshops where we are examining the data that's available. We're examining the potential stakeholders or buyers or users of the data and what their needs and wants are. Social media data, the possibility of harvesting web content, open data, syndicated data sources, and perhaps integrating them with our own to drive more value from our own data. We're looking also at a range of stakeholders, again, not just internally and not necessarily only our immediate partners and suppliers, but our partners' partners and our suppliers' partners and our partners' suppliers and our suppliers' suppliers and our customer suppliers, and who else within this extended business ecosystem might find some of this data valuable, and maybe invite them to the table as part of these ideation exercises. We're also looking at examples. So it's great to have examples of what others have done with data and think about how we might adapt them to your own business. People often ask me and my team, what are others in our industry doing? And my kind of flippant response to that often is, why do you want to be in second place? So anyway, at the end of that kind of process, we'll typically, the last part of this is generating hypotheses. So with the stakeholders in mind, what kinds of hypotheses can we answer? How can we help them diagnose or predict or prescribe or automate or digitalize something to improve their business? We typically are kind of not looking at what kind of pie charts and bar charts we can build for people. We're looking at more deeply what kinds of real actionable answers can we help them provide from the data. And at the end of these workshops, which may last anywhere from a couple days to maybe a couple weeks, depending on scope, we'll have generated up to 100 new ideas. So then you go, all right, well, which ones should we jump on? And then we go through a feasibility process where we're looking at the various feasibility characteristics. Are they operationally feasible, technically feasible? Is the data of significant enough quality and availability? Do they have the managerial capacity to handle this? Is it scalable? Is it legal? Is it ethical? So there are various about 10 or so different feasibility characteristics that we will weight and then rate for each of these ideas to kind of see what floats to the top. Then we'll do kind of a standard market testing. We'll go out to the potential buyers and users and really test the ideas with them after we refine them a bit to determine what's their capacity to leverage that data, and then maybe get some hint as to what they're willing to pay for it as well. And then the rest of the process is really kind of a typical product approach of identifying and curating the raw materials, the data, defining the data products, specifying any kind of foundational requirements that they need, like if they're implementing a data marketplace, what is that technology platform going to look like and how do they implement that? And then how do they architect and engineer everything? How are they going to support the data products and roll them out and market them? And license them, and all that, as part of that overall process. So it sounds complex, but it's something that most companies are doing already today in defining and rolling out new products or services. It's kind of a shortcut to making data available to others. You can handle the transactions, the searching, the cataloging, the availability, the samples. It makes a lot of that easier than just giving somebody, and much more usable than giving somebody just like an API to your data lake, right? Or doing this all in a manual way, manually creating a catalog and having people click on what they want to subscribe to, and then having somebody go build that and make it available. It kind of shortcuts that whole manual process. A lot of young companies are, because they're digital native companies, are already collecting a lot of data. It's like a core part of their business. And interestingly, we find that data product kinds of companies, those that are kind of in the business of making data or analytics, available, have a market to book value ratio that's nearly 3 times due to the Silicon Valley Bank failure. Is companies kind of scratching their heads, young startup companies scratching their heads, going, how are we going to kind of get funding and going forward? And one of the interesting ways that we've seen is for organizations to collateralize their data. So if you're a young company that's data rich and cash poor, there are banks out there that will collateralize your data. And we're going to get into the whole valuation thing in our next talk, so we'll cover that a little bit more. But I think data, early stage companies are typically in a really good position to productize their data, to generate new and innovative value streams, and then also to collateralize it for investment purposes. Given type of data, any given data source, any given data asset has many different types of consumers. Again, machine consumers, human consumers, different kinds of human consumers, marketers, finance people, investors, et cetera. And they all want that data packaged and productized in a different way, whether it's raw data or data access and query capabilities, or an analytic workspace, or integrated or enriched data, or pre-aggregated data, or insights or reports, or custom data products, or integrated data solutions. There's a range of ways that you can package the same data. So I would say anybody who's only got a single data product probably hasn't either explored the range of potential consumers enough, or the range of ways that they could package data to attract different kinds of consumers. Is that it's not their core business. So for a lot of companies, data products are not your core business. It's not part of your original business model, perhaps. And if it isn't, then how do you build that business case? How do you transition a little bit into a business model where data products are part of your overall business? I think there are certain preconceived notions about data monetization and data products and data marketplaces that get in the way. Like, one of them is that data has to be sold to be monetized. As we talked about, I gave almost a dozen different examples of monetizing data in ways that doesn't involve selling it for cash. It also doesn't necessarily involve your own data. So if you're thinking about data products, think about integrating with external data. A lot of companies will think that, well, our data is so proprietary to us, it's not of really any value to anybody else, and it's generally not the case. There's always folks out there within your business ecosystem that will find some of your data valuable. Again, you don't have to be in the data business to productize data or create a data marketplace. And a lot of companies, again, will say, well, due to privacy regulations, we can't license our data or sell it to others, and that's just not true. Like I said, there are models that can work around those issues. So yeah, I think that's part of it. And then building that business case. Problems, which is they have their core business, which has nothing to do with creating data products. They're, I don't know, fat, dumb, and happy. That's kind of pejorative, but yeah, they're just happy with that kind of status quo of their own products and services. And then larger companies that are more established might have more data that has been created via manual processes than automated, digital processes. And in those cases, they typically will have greater data quality issues that might inhibit them from externalizing. Having a distinct platform for your data products, not giving people access to your cloud, your data warehouse, your data lake in the cloud, is certainly a way to deal with that. Another way is creating synthetic data sets that where the data is a bit dithered, but maintains the same statistical properties. We see a lot of banks doing that, and then just being just open to new ideas and new business models. Worked with an insurance company who said, listen, one of the automobile companies wants to purchase or license or get access to our claims data so that they can determine what's happening during accidents, and maybe they can build safer cars. It would be a win-win-win for everybody. I call it a triple play, win, where the automobile companies build more competitive cars, the insurance company would reduce its loss ratios, and consumers would get better, safer automobiles. And this insurance company said, we just can't be seen as selling our customer data to anyone. It's part of our brand, is very customer oriented. And I said, well, so this is a brand issue. It's not a technology issue. It's not really a legal issue. It's not an ethical issue. It's not a compliance issue. It's a brand issue. And I said, well, why not take this idea off brand and create a separate business unit to do this? And that's what they actually created, a separate company to monetize their data, create data products. So yeah, I mean, the technical issues are not insurmountable, but often the brand related ones or the reputational ones are a big issue. Keep coming back to the fact that increasingly machines are going to be the primary consumers of data, not humans. And so any way that an organization can put its kind of data online and make it available, again, not just to humans, but to the processes of their partners, and create kind of a data ecosystem, I think that's probably where we're headed. The level of automation and artificial intelligence-based automation that we see today is, to use the word exponential seems trite, but it's just amazing where this is going to head in the next few years. I actually foresee the possibility of we have self-driving cars. I see the possibility of a self-driving organization someday.